are millions of books in the world. There are lots of genres. A large number of books are self-help books. Books on self-esteem, raising children, marriage, finances, and anything else. When you think about it, what are those books trying to teach you? What do you want to get out of reading that book? A better life. You are seeking a life with one less problem and one more way to bring happiness. You think that by reading all the self-help books, you might feel a little bit more fulfilled than you were before. But if that were true, then the editor at the publishing company that publishes all the self-help books would be the most completed and full person on earth. I'm guessing, however, the editor isn't the most satisfied person. There is, however, a book that, when you read it, it makes you feel more complete than you were before. It covers all of the self-help topics, and much more. You guessed it, the Bible. Probably makes sense, because otherwise, in church, I would probably be selling happiness for dummies. If I had a watch that was broken, I wouldn't go to McDonald's to get it fixed. I would go to a watchmaker. The watchmaker would know how to fix it. This is the same with self-help books and the Bible. God created you. He created the world. He's been around the block a few times. He knows why he created you and what you were meant for. A worker at McDonald's might help you fix the watch by asking if you replace the batteries, or he might direct you to the store. But only the watchmaker can truly fix the watch. The self-help books can direct you towards God, but you need to seek Him and follow His instructions. Do that by reading the Bible. He has left us a manual for life, just how a watch has instructions. Fortunately, we only look to the instructions when the watch is broken, similar to what happens in our lives. If we come to God in all times, in joy and in sorrow, then our fulfillment level will be higher and our sadness level will go down. I'm not saying that if you follow God, life will be carefree, but as John 16:33 says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. We know that with God, we can overcome any challenge. If we seek Him and follow His guidance, things will come out for the better. At other times, we think we can do this all on our own, but then we face troubles and we don't know where to turn. That's when we remember God and come back to Him. This is like the parable of the lost son in Luke 15:11-32. The son went out into the world and away from his father. At first it was great, but then trouble came in the form of a famine. He tried to figure it out himself, failed, and was miserable. But then he remembered his father. The way he came back to his father kind of reminds me how a dog comes back to its owner after it has done something wrong. After the father greeted him with a welcome home celebration, I would like to think the son stayed with his father and was the best son in the whole world. But he may have not learned his lesson. Sometimes we need to learn how dependent we are on God the hard way, by going it alone. Sometimes we have to learn it the hard way again and again and again. To bring it full circle, if we stay with God in the good times and the bad, then our overall fulfillment level will go up. But sometimes we need to stumble to allow God to pick us up so we can appreciate His love for us. The son stumbled in the short-lived joys of wild living, as the NIV put it. I think that the son's wild living wasn't actually happiness, but fake pleasure he deemed happiness. Stacy Charter says, happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to deal with them. Think about if you had no problems, no challenges. What would life be like? You wake up in the morning and roll back over. because you have nothing to do today. At first it sounds nice, but then at the end of the day, you would be bored out of your mind. I mean, in every book, every movie, even parable, there is a problem. Without it, everything would be boring, the opposite of gratification. If you do not have challenges in life, even the little things seem big. Pursuit of happiness. The phrase is in our Declaration of Independence. People have been seeking contentment for literally thousands of years. Happiness is the elusive enigma of an emotion. Why is it so hard to obtain? Because we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. It seems to us like whenever we want something, we want it now, like little toddlers. So, as spiritual beings having a human experience, we look at what is around us, and that is the world. We expect and try to have bliss, here and now, in this world. My idea why fulfillment is so hard to find has two main points. The first is that happiness can never be found directly. The second is that true happiness is not even here in earthly things, but with God. Jubilation can never be found directly. It is a byproduct. A while ago, I found this quote. It just struck me. Happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. Aristotle. If our whole entire purpose in life is to find delight, how come no one remembers the happiest man or woman on earth? We remember the people who made this world a better place through their struggles or helping people. Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela. They may not have been the happiest people on earth, but they are remembered because they made this world a better place. I'm not saying that the purpose of life is to be remembered, but the purpose of life is not to find pleasure. Gratification may be a byproduct of the purpose of life, though. On second thought, our modern day heroes may not have been high up on the fulfillment scale, but they may have been sometimes. When they're out there helping people and bringing hope, they may have felt so accomplished. But at other times, they may have seen the world in all of its misery and felt helpless. Normal everyday life is like that, full of ups and downs and times when you don't even know what to feel. If we only live for the high points, then we don't know how to enjoy the small things. Have you ever planned a vacation, wanting to make it once in a lifetime experience? Wanting to make it the perfect vacation, looking all over the internet for the nicest spot for a picnic, or even the best rest area to stretch your legs, for the best beach and ice cream shop? Does the vacation ever turn out perfect? Oftentimes, no. Even when you're planning for it, you get frustrated and angry. My idea why is because happiness can never be achieved directly. It is a byproduct. Tim Keller, in his video you're about to see, talks about seeking happiness and seeking righteousness.
This happiness, and this is the height of wisdom, and in some ways it's going to be my shortest point, because it's so wise and profound. It's all through the Bible. It's there everywhere. Almost everywhere you see the word blessed in the Bible, which is all over, it's there. It's so obvious we miss it. Happiness can never be found directly. Happiness can never be gotten directly. Happiness is always and only a byproduct of seeking something else more than happiness. See, every place, whenever you see the word blessed, it never, ever says, blessed is the one who seeks blessedness. Blessed is the one who hungers and thirsts after blessedness. Never, ever. It always says, blessed is he who hungers and thirsts after something more than blessedness. If you've heard this before, ask yourself right now, if I know this, why am I not more happy? Seek happiness or seek righteousness. Which should you? If you seek righteousness more than happiness, you'll get both. If you seek happiness more than righteousness, you'll get neither. That's the teaching of the text.
I've heard it said that joy, when taken letter by letter, can make us understand how such a small word can bring fulfillment. When you have your priorities right, everything else will fall into place. J is first, and it means that Jesus should be the first thing in your life. O is second, and others should be after Jesus. Y is after all the rest, yourself. Get your priorities straight. When you're putting Jesus in first, everything that you do, it is really no wonder that others see joy in you. H. Jackson Brown Jr. said, "Love is when the other person's happiness is more important than your own. If you care about that person, then their tallies of smiles, unless if they're a princess at Disney, will bring you satisfaction. Being able to help someone is one of the high points of an ordinary day. To make them content. Like I said earlier about people like Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King Jr., they may have reached a higher fulfillment level because they found their purpose in helping people." Happiness has no definition. Sometimes small actions can touch our heart. Happiness or not depends on how you look at it. When we do small acts of kindness, we don't know how far it will lead, how it can change a life. This following illustration has struck me. It is so powerful how such a small deed can change an outlook on life. Two men, both seriously ill, occupied the same hospital room. One man was allowed to sit up in bed each afternoon for an hour to drain fluid from his lungs. His bed was right next to the room's only window. The men talked in hours on end. They spoke of their wives, their families, their homes, their jobs, their involvement in the military service, where they'd been on vacation. Every afternoon, the man in the bed by the window could sit up. He would pass his time by describing to his roommate all the things he could see outside the window. The man in the other bed began to live for those 1 hour periods where his world would be broadened and enlivened by all the activity and color of the outside world. The man described how the window overlooked a park with a lovely lake. Ducks and swans played in the water while children sailed their model boats. Young lovers walked arm in arm amidst the flowers of every color. A fine view of the city skyline could be seen in the distance. As the man described all this in exquisite detail, the other man on the other side of the room could close his eyes and imagine the picturesque scene. One warm afternoon, the man by the window described a parade passing by. Although the other man could not hear the band, he could see it in his mind's eye as the gentleman portrayed it in descriptive words. Days, weeks, months passed. One morning, the nurse arrived to bring water for their baths, only to find the lifeless body of the man by the window, who died peacefully in his sleep. She was saddened and called the hospital attendants to take the body away. As soon as it seemed appropriate, the other man asked if it could be moved next to the window. The nurse was pleased to make the switch, and after making sure he was comfortable, she left him alone. Slowly, painfully, he propped himself up on one elbow to take his first look at the real world outside. He straightened to slowly turn to look out the window beside the bed. It faced a blank wall. The man asked the nurse what could have compelled his deceased roommate, who described such wonderful things out this window. The nurse responded that the man was blind and could not even see the wall. She said, "Perhaps he just wanted to encourage you." Epilogue. There is tremendous satisfaction in making others smile upon life, despite our own situations. Shared grief is half the sorrow, but happiness when shared is doubled. If you want to feel rich, just count all the things that you have that money can't buy. Today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. Happiness is a byproduct. I don't think that the man by the window would have been as happy if he just kept to himself. But because he shared his visualizations, his joy increased, making someone else feel better and having a purpose. Sometimes we get so caught up in life and trying to make ourselves happy and pull away from God. That is the exact opposite of what we should do. Still, our tendency is to pull away because of our need to feel in control. But when your whole focus is on pleasing yourself and how you will get yourself there, where does God fit in? Finding true happiness? That's God's department. Let's take a step back. What is heaven like? We don't know what it will be like, but we know that God will be there. What is hell like? Well, we know that God isn't there. In heaven, will there be exuberance and will everything be right? Yes. Will hell be like your worst nightmare, only a billion times worse? That's only scratching the surface. So when you're drawing closer to God, you're drawing closer to heaven. And what is heaven? True utopia. When you're pulling away from God, where are you drawing closer to? You guessed it. Hell. So then, where is true happiness? With God. God is true happiness. Matthew 6:33 says, "But first seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." To put this in context, in the previous verses, Jesus is telling us not to worry about earthly things, but God will sustain you. Others indulge themselves in expensive clothing or gourmet food, but long-lasting contentment can't be found that way. That is the reason why Jesus told us to seek his righteousness and his kingdom. Those who don't have hope in heaven will always trying to be finding the one thing that can fill the void inside. It's like Mary Poppins' bag. When instead of furniture and lamps pulling out of an endless bag, our bag can just never be filled. We try to stuff the bag with money, success, popularity, riches, or anything else we can get our hands on. The void can just never be filled. That's when God steps in. He not only fills the void, but he fixes it. He closes the bag. In this bag, this void, this longing is filled. You feel complete. You have an everlasting hope and friend. Gilbert N. Beacon says, "Other men see only a hopeless end, but the Christian rejoices in an endless hope. Others may see an impossible situation, but we see an everlasting solution. We can face today because we know God is right along beside us every step of the way. We can rejoice in this life because we know the next one will be so much better. This life and its enjoyment is like smelling popcorn in the next room over, and you just have to wait a little while until you can come over and have it. But all the while, you're dreaming about how good it's going to be. Except I'm sure heaven is going to be even better than I can imagine." One of the last days of summer, my grandma Jennifer and I were playing a game. Jennifer was looking for the best spot to play a piece, and she said, "I'm looking for a better place." My grandma retorted, "I know, but you have to die to get there. The best is yet to come." There was a young woman who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and been given 3 months to live. She was getting her things in order, and she contacted her pastor to have him come to her house to discuss certain aspects of her final wishes. She told him what song she wanted sung at the service, scripture she would like read, and what outfit she wanted to be buried in. Everything was in order, and the pastor was preparing to leave. And the young woman suddenly remembered something very important to her. "There's one more thing," she said, excitedly. "What's that?" the pastor replied. "This is very important," the young woman continued. "I want to be buried with a fork in my right hand." The pastor stood looking at the young woman, not quite knowing what to say. "That surprises you, doesn't it?" the young woman asked. "Well, to be honest, I am puzzled by the request." The young woman explained. "My grandmother once told me this story, and from that time on, I was always tried to pass along its message to those who were in need of encouragement. In all my years of attending social and dinners, I always remembered that when the dishes of the main course were being cleared, someone would inevitably lean over and say, 'Keep your fork.' It was my best part of it was my favorite part because I knew something better was coming, like velvety chocolate cake or deep dish apple pie. So I just want people to see me there in that casket with my fork in my hand and want them to wonder, 'What's with the fork?' Then I want you to tell them, 'Keep your fork. The best is yet to come.'" The pastor's eyes welled up with tears of joy as he hugged the young woman goodbye. He knew this would be one of the last times he would see her before her death. But he also knew the young woman had a better grasp of heaven than he did. She knew something better was coming. At the funeral, people were walking by, and one of her close friends stood by and looked up in surprise. "Goodness, what's with the fork?" During his message, the pastor told the people of the conversation he had with the young woman shortly before she died. He told them about the fork and what it symbolized to her. And just remember, keep your fork. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in life that we bumble around not truly grasping that, hey, this life is nothing compared to the next. So why worry? But no one can truly grasp that idea. Only Jesus. But we can remind ourselves that we have an endless hope and everlasting euphoria that comes with that hope, if we accept it. When we are in pain and tribulations of this life get to us, remember, fix your eyes on heaven, and a small but powerful part will come to you. William Gurnall says, "Hope fills the afflicted soul with such inward joy and consolation that it can laugh while tears are in the eye and sigh and sing all in a breath." Just because you don't have a smile plastered on your face doesn't mean that you're gloomy. Being joyful doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It means you decide to see beyond the imperfections. For our whole life, we can be chasing things that we think will make us delighted. And we can forget to enjoy the present. In a sense, smell the roses. The Dalai Lama says, "I believe the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness." That is clear. We're seeking something better in life. I think the very motion of our life is towards happiness. If heaven is true happiness, then it can be said that the very motion of our life is towards heaven. That is true in a sense, that our life is leading up to our death. And if we believe in God, then we'll go to heaven. God is in heaven, and the very motion of our life is towards God. Interesting how that is. Happiness seems to be like the ultimate goal in everyone's life. God built it into our lives that the only way to get true blessedness is to love Him. When we are less concerned about personal gratification and more concerned about serving God and bringing cheerfulness to others, bringing God to others, we are closer to true bliss. When we are seeking joy, we are really seeking what heaven will give us. to bring it full circle, in pursuit of happiness. We are really seeking God. But the only way to get to total bliss is through God. Jeremiah 29:13 says, "You will seek me, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart." When Zacchaeus climbed the sycamore tree, he was seeking Jesus. He felt empty and he wanted to be filled. Zacchaeus gave away his possessions, things in this life that seemed to grant delight. He gave away false joy. Sometimes hard to do, but to get true exuberance. I think part of the reason why it can be so difficult to enjoy this life is because we refuse to let go of the things that make us sad. We then focus on what makes us sad. And we don't realize the gift God has given us. He has given us hope. Rex Rook says, "Get hope, get joy. Get joy, get strength." The gift of hope allows us a way to get joy and realize to come up for air. And we can get the strength to let go of the sadness and follow God. Sometimes we're blind to God's gift. We close our eyes and turn away because we want to stay in our little comfort zones. We don't want to change, even if change is for the better. Happiness or unhappiness is a matter of choice. Do you accept the gift or not? To hope again. Suzanne Collins writes in Gregor the Overlander, "Hope. There are times when it will be very hard to find, times when it will be much easier to choose hate instead. But if you want to find peace, you must first be able to hope. It is possible. If heaven is peace and bliss, we must choose hope over hate, God's ways for ours. Hope and happiness go hand in hand, because God is hope and heaven is true delight." Emil Brunner put it well, "What oxygen is to the lungs, such is hope to the meaning of life." But how can we have joyfulness on earth, have a little bit of heaven down here? We can never truly live on cloud nine in this life when we're apart from God, but we can be filled with His hope. Alan K. Charnock says, "The elements of joy well. The grand essentials of happiness are something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for." God gives us all three. Something to do, to serve Him by helping others, to love Him. He made people so then we can love one another. And we are to love as He loved us first. 1 John 4:10 says, "This is love, not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins." God gave us something to hope for, a better life, one filled with peace, total bliss. The grand essential of happiness is God. Believe in God and joy will follow. But all of this happens only if you accept His gift. It's Christmas morning, and God has given you hope and a new life, all wrapped in a big bow. Will you accept His gift? Will you allow some change in your life for eternal bliss? If you have not, then I invite you to receive His love and light into your heart, into your life. Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for making a better place for us in your house to be with you. Thank you for giving us hope and loving us first, even with all of our imperfections. In your words, we put our hope and trust. Amen.